All right, we are live. Got to see if we can get the Facebook groups in here and let it breathe a little bit while we do that. Hope everyone is ready for the holidays that are coming up and have a Merry Christmasle. All right, looks like we're green check marks across the board. We're good to go.
Awesome. Well, welcome back into another episode of Dove Valley Deep Divers, your ultimate Broncos podcast for all your latest and greatest news on your Denver Broncos. I'm one of your hosts today, Kenneth Booker, and here with me today is the OG of Dove Valley Deep Divers, Mr. Erick Trickel. Erick, how you doing today? How you recovering after that brutal loss?
Yeah, I'm doing good. I don't know, after the years of what we've had go on with the Broncos over the last few years. I mean, there was what was it, 2021 or 2020? We had a little slight shot at the playoffs and let it slip through our grasp. Last year, we had a good shot at the playoffs and we let it slip through our grasp. I had Denver winning this game. I'm not overly surprised they lost, just because of the way the Chargers are and the talent that they have and how good that defense has been. But it's not that they lost, it's how they lost that's so frustrating, and we are definitely gonna be getting into that, because there are some issues with the coaching staff that I definitely wanna jump in on, that need to be corrected both from Vance Joseph and Sean Payton. Sean Payton deserves a lot of blame for what happened last night.
Yeah, that was a rough one to watch, man. It was like the complete opposite of what usually happens. We usually start slow and finish strong, and it was the other way around. And I don't know. It's always I don't know. You think you'd want to be the team that starts fast, but it just turns into anxiety the rest of the game of like, oh my god, please hold on to this lead. Um, and then before we start the show, we're gonna do a quick episode breakdown. First thing we're gonna talk about is did the missed pass interference call with the super famous one that went viral cost Denver the game? And yes, it was pass interference. He was grabbing his arm, he was holding it down. And then next, we're going to talk about our second half collapse. What happened? Why we just fell apart? We started so well, and it was like a complete opposite after that. A couple of quotes from the coach as well. We're going to throw in there. And then where do the Broncos stand in the playoff race after this heartbreaking loss? After that, we have Sunday off, but we're going to have the Bengals next on Saturday. So we'll talk about the Bengals matchup and some of the stuff we need to improve to not have a repeat performance of what we had against the Chargers. And then Riley Moss returns to the lineup. It should be a huge difference, but at the same time, it was really awesome to see Chris Abrams-Draine show that he belongs on this team. He belongs on the field, and we got a good guy who could spell these guys every once in a while, and it's not too much of a significant drop off. So the first one we're going to talk about is the pass interference. What did you think about that when you saw that pass interference call and how it wasn't called and how some people are explaining how it wasn't a pass interference?
So one of the biggest things I look for is, are they playing the ball? Because if they're playing the ball, you can typically get away with a little bit more. He wasn't playing the ball. He was playing through the receiver. He has a hold of him, and while he gets his hand up to bat the ball away, part of the things you want to look for is that they're looking for the ball. Again, playing the ball. That is a big component of pass interference or not. He never does. He is strictly playing the receiver, which is fine to an extent until you start grabbing them and putting your hand direct on their helmet at one point and like pushing them and driving them farther downfield. Mims is trying to work his way back to the ball a little bit, and that is a pretty textbook pass interference call. We've seen it called multiple times on Denver and for Denver. It is one of the things when you see Courtland Sutton draw pass interference, it is often on a similar play or similar situation as that. He's trying to work his way back to the ball, and the defensive back plays through him, and wham, there's a flag thrown. I understand a lot of people there's a lot of like Charger fans that I've seen on social media and stuff that are like, oh, that's fine. They picked up the flag for the illegal man downfield earlier on the Broncos touchdown, which, yeah, they did. That was a penalty. That was an illegal man downfield. Quinn Miners, he engages one guy, he comes off of it and then goes downfield and then engages somebody else. That is illegal man downfield. You have to block your guy downfield instead of going and engaging downfield. I get that, but that doesn't also change the fact that one of the touchdown drives from the Chargers, there were multiple missed holding calls. One of
Mhm.
them had Joe Alt with his hands up around the neck on both sides on the front and the back of Jonathan Cooper's pads. There's another one where Rashawn Slater is basically, horse collar tackling Nick Benito pretty much. There was another one that was a pretty obvious one, I believe, on either on DJ Jones or Malcolm Roach. I'm pretty sure it was DJ Jones. All of this on the same drive. And so, like, it's just one of those things that was very frustrating to watch, especially when you see a holding call on Garrett Bowles, which was holding, but wasn't near as obvious or as impactful as those ones on the charges that were missed. And one thing that they talk about with holds is holding happens every play, but they look at how much of an impact it has on the play.
Mhm.
That is one thing that I hear all the time from rules analysts and stuff like that. Well, when one of these guys is right where the ball ends up being ran at and there's no holding call on, well, that's just a bad missed call. So it's frustrating that penalties are such a big part of it. It shouldn't have been. Um, but the penalties aren't the only reason why Denver lost, just to be clear. Like, they played a bad game on defense. Their offense didn't do enough. The coaching was abysmal at multiple situations. They lost all around, from penalties to the play calling to the execution on the field. It was a matter of everything.
Yeah, that was I don't know. I felt like we had plenty of times to pull away in that game, and we just couldn't do it. The 11 points, the end of the half. Um, it's kind of a train wreck all over the place. Even though the only good thing is, like, I know we can beat that team. I know we're good enough to beat them. So I'm not, as long as we just got to get in. So we have David McElrath coming in with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, David. I really appreciate it. We both really appreciate it. Hope you're having hope we got all your Christmas shopping finished. I'm gonna use 250 of this to finish mine. So he says, "Merry Christmas, Broncos countries." Chad, Zach, Deacon, Scott. Was that GB USA, or what is that? What, you know what that means? GB USA.
I'm not
You
sure.
can put it in the chat so we can get that one. David, sorry about that. 10-7. Okay. MHH for life. Knicks for 6. CL Team Knicks. Denver Broncos for life. Buckham times 3. Definitely. Man, I'm excited to see this next game coming up pretty soon too. I don't know. I've never been. You're always usually down after losses, whatever. I'm still excited. Like, I'm just like, oh man, we just let that one get away. Like, we're good enough to
It's
beat them.
it's still knowing all they have to do is win and they're in. A
Hmm.
win and they're in. That's all it takes. It's a win and they're in. What's such a bummer about this loss is I'm always one is like, okay, let's get to the next step. Like, playoffs are great. Let's win. Let's beat the Chargers. Let's get into the playoffs, and let's put ourselves in a position to win that 5th seed to potentially take on the Texans and potentially
Yes.
advance around. Because if you're going to Pittsburgh or Buffalo, who are expected, or Baltimore, two of those 3 teams are going to be the second and third seeds in the AFC. That's a tough task.
Hmm.
The Texans are very beatable by this Broncos team, and I was looking at advancing it. That seems out of the picture now. Now it looks like at most they'll be able to get the 6th or 7th seed. Still slight chance of the 5th seed, but unlikely. But again, the excitement is still there because how long has it been since we're a win and in, like, with this team?
Yeah.
It's been
With
so
multiple
long.
games to go, with 2 games to go, so it's not
Yeah.
like a situation where, yeah, with just one chance to win. Yeah, it's really, we set ourselves up to be put in a situation to where we can we have, what's it? I think it's like 87% chance, whatever,
Yeah.
something like that. Um, yeah, that second half collapse. So, oh, actually, before I get to that, we had some more. I just want to say hi to a couple people in here. Um, David Youngkin talking about if Moss is back, then our defense will be different. If Moss is not back, then we are not winning against Cincy. Um, thank you for that comment, David. What do you think about that? Do you think Moss is a deciding factor against Cincy?
Um, in a way I do. So I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but this is a good time. Is Vance Joseph has had 5 games this season where he's been predominantly zone, and they've all been games where either Patrick Surtain or Riley Moss has played, and they have been the worst defensive performances on the season. They got lucky against the Browns and the Browns, the Saints, and the Colts. They all had some luck involved in that with takeaways and stuff like that. But the defense was struggling for two of those games against the Saints. They were benefiting from the fact that the Saints were so beat up on offense. Top two or three receivers were out. Top tight end was out. Most of their starting offensive line was out. Starting quarterback was out. They got helped out there a little bit with that aspect, and so they ended up playing well. But this defense struggles when playing zone. The pressure, the defensive front hasn't been as good rushing out of zone because there's less blitzing. They're not as effective getting pressure, and it's frustrating to watch because in last night's game you kept throwing zone at them. You were having your linebackers play the run, and all they were doing was hitting that weakness in zone coverage. When you have your linebackers freezing on off play action, hit the over route, dropping it underneath the safeties over the linebackers. It's a pretty simple adjustment to make to help cut back on that being an issue. But just stick to man. That's what this defense thrives in. That's where this defense is one of the best in the NFL, comparatively to being one of the worst defenses in the NFL when you exclude takeaways specifically here, just because takeaways are such a boost for defenses in zone coverage. Like one of the best without turnovers, without takeaways in man coverage, one of the worst in zone coverage without the takeaways. Like it's pretty simple to see that you just need to stick with man coverage. I said this after the Baltimore Ravens game. I would rather stick to what you do best and lose than change it up and lose. Stick to man. And if you get beat playing man, that stinks, that sucks, but you're keeping your defense doing what they are best at instead of changing it up to what they're not so good at and getting beat anyways.
Yeah, definitely. Like I don't know, it's almost like it reminds me when you play prevent defense late in the fourth quarter, but they're playing it the entire game sometimes where guys are just running open. They're catching the ball in stride and they're catching and getting a ton of yak yards. The yak that's the worst. When you get like 5 yard catch or whatever and they turn it to 60 yards. Or 23 yards or whatever. And yeah, like David was saying, we think he's playing too conservative. He's got the players to be aggressive. He's got the players that are at least on the PS2 side, whatever, to compensate if somebody I don't know, for any kind of mistakes, whatever, to where you can be aggressive no matter what.
Yeah. But before we keep going, we do have a sponsor for tonight's show that we gotta say thank you to.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. So well, we got the next game on Saturday, the 28th. You can do some little betting on that if you want. If you got to head over to Underdog Sports, Underdog Fantasy, I meant. Sorry, can't even talk. Underdog Fantasy, I meant. Underdog is a place to play. If you're a sports fan looking to win money while watching sports, with over 5 million happy players and $2 billion won, Underdog makes it fun and easy to cash in all your favorite athletes' performances. Compete against other players by just selecting higher or low on 2 or more player stats, and you can win up to 1,000 times your money. So turn every touchdown into a win with Underdog.
So with their champ scheme, you could win up to 1,000 times your money just by choosing higher or lower on a player's stats, like passing yards, interceptions, touchdowns, and much more. Like, for example, will Bo Nix have higher or lower than 237.5 passing yards next week? Will Nix have higher or lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns? Every dog deserves a second chance, and with Underdog Rescues, you can get your money back and receive a promo if an early injury causes your entry to lose.
Download the Underdog app today and use the code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the Underdog app today and use the code MHuddle to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Every player, every touchdown, just select higher or lower on Underdog.
Now, you must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Thank you, Underdog Fantasy, for your support.
See, I make a little Christmas money. I spend a little Christmas money. I don't know. Yeah, Michael Ronquillo coming in said, good evening, Eric and Kenneth on Dove Valley Deep Divers Gobo Broncos. Good evening, Michael. pleasure to have you in the comments today. Um,
And real quick, I just want to grab this from David Youngkin saying it's funny that everyone is saying that, oh, it's the Bills. We'll have to play, but everyone forgot that we beat the Bills last season with a less talented squad. Denver is better this year than they were last year. So are the Bills. The Bills are a lot better than they were last year, and they're playing so much better. They're playing much more consistently. They're playing at such a high level, and unlike last year, you can't bet on, like, even last year they got lucky that it had turned out that way, but they had a historical rate for turnovers. That's something that you just don't have, and that helped them win. And that's great. It's just not something to rely on. Just because we beat the Bills last year doesn't mean we will again. I mean, if that's the case, then you beat them last year, then why play them this year? Well, we lost how many games straight to the Raiders before we beat them this
yeah,
year? We lost how many games to the Chiefs before we beat them last year? Just what's happened previously doesn't mean it's going to be this year.
yeah.
Are they winnable? Every team is beatable. Every game you can win, but the Bills are a lot tougher this year than they were last year. They are currently the best team in the NFL.
So my pushback on that would be to the difference between the last year's team and this year's team is um there was turnovers last year and now it's the pass rush. And then I guess the cornerbacks as well. Um if we can get that pass rush going and we're playing man and Riley Moss is out there, that's when we can beat teams like that. That's how
Yep.
we beat Tom Brady all those years. It was a pass rush.
Mhm.
Um, just getting him off his spot, getting him moving, uh, cutting down those times of how much time he had to release the ball and stuff like that. Just always, and that's how he lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl, that pass rush. So like,
Yeah.
if we have the pass rush and we have the coverage on the back end, and we don't start getting scared and playing zone the entire time, we we can beat them. I'm not gonna say we are gonna beat them, but we definitely have a better
And
team suited to beat them now.
it's still weeks away. There's still 2 games left.
Mhm.
Denver can still clinch a playoff game with this loss. They just need a few losses from other teams. If the Colts lose, Miami loses, and the Bengals lose this week, Denver's in. So root against them, because then it would be nice to go into the next 2 weeks with not having to worry necessarily about a playoff spot and
Mhm.
being able to focus on seeding. Um, so yeah, I mean they still can get in and they can still get the 6 seed. They can still end up playing the Ravens or the Steelers. Either one would be a rematch of earlier on the season. I don't think that they would turn out exactly the same as they did. Um, so yeah, I mean, it's just a thing of we still have a lot of time left, and injuries happen.
Definitely.
And it can happen both ways. So, what the case is now, Buffalo Bills are a better team than the Broncos right now. Will they be 3 weeks from now? We don't know.
So I think you were the one of the few people too. This is like a little different from this is also about this the collapse before the second half was how they ended the first half. Um, you probably been one of the only few people that knew that what happened and how that all
Yep.
played out without being explained to. Because I was like, "What the heck is going on? Wait, what?" Um, it was in a yeah, and then it didn't cost them the game, but it put them in a situation to where instead of being down uh with 3, whatever, or instead of being down 7, we're down 10, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that what I
It
think that's what it was.
the fair kick or the fair catch free kick rule is a favorite of mine, just like it is Harbaugh's. He talked about it last time. And last time it was attempted, by the way, was by Harbaugh when he was with the 49ers. I can't remember the exact year, but it ended up being a 72-yard free kick attempt for them that they missed.
Okay.
So he's done it before. And I was sitting there and one of the few times I actually get a chance to watch the game out in the living room. And my wife and daughter were out there, and I was sitting there going off about Sean Payton's play calling on that drive prior because it was abysmal. Either A, you pass it and you really aim to move the ball and get into field goal range, or B, you run it and work for a first down and run out the clock. They had all 3 timeouts, so you don't want to pass it. You don't want to dink and dunk it. You want to either run it to give your team the best chance to, do that. But hey, Sean Payton decided after the first 2
Yeah.
drives to not run the dang ball, um, which is
Yeah.
an issue. Um, and no, he just kind of mix matched it and just continues this trend that he's had all season of struggling with the end of half and end of game decisions, because on the end of game, when he decided to kick the field goal, that was the right call. In that
Mhm.
situation, to kick that field goal, that was the right call. Give yourself, you no matter what, you had to get an onside kick. Giving yourself the most time with 2 touchdowns, that is the right decision. The drive before that to punt it, that was a terrible decision from him, as well as some of the play sequencing that he had leading up to that. But no, the free kick, it was just as much as I hate to say this, it was deserved to happen with how Sean Payton handled it. I mean, it is known that both Harbaughs love to play for it at the end of the first half, and Sean Payton should have known this. And I mean, they all the coaches practice it. Like,
Yeah.
why are you giving them the opening to actually go out there and try it?
Well, I think it would happen was if you know how they zoomed in on his play card, right? And it said
Yeah,
like run the ball or something. If you pan a little to the right, it says Vic Fangio's old play card on how to like close the first half. So I think that he was using the Fangio system on how to close the first half, and that's how he
yeah.
kind of just fell apart
So
because that
a lot
reminded
of
me
these
of Fangio's like fumbles on
a
not
lot
calling
of these
timeouts and stuff like that.
a lot of these older coaches, they all kind of follow the same end of half, end of game sequencing in certain situations. And this is one that, yeah, we saw it under Fangio with, Pat Shermer and even Rick Scangarello when he was the offensive coordinator. We saw it for sometimes with John Fox. Um, Not all the time, especially with Peyton Manning there. Saw it at times with Gary Kubiak, especially the season after, we won the Super Bowl. A lot of
Mhm.
these older coaches, that's just the way they do, and it's just not the way it should be done anymore. Times have changed.
Well, after that, we're gonna see where we stand in the playoffs after that. So after that, our playoff chances went from like in the higher 90s um, down to 87%. So it's still
Mhm.
fabulous chance of making the playoffs. So I put a poll out there asking people's confidence at how we're gonna if we're gonna make the playoffs, and it was kind of all over the place. There was a lot of people that were already giving up on the team, um, not because I think what they saw last night, but more of just the history of the last 9 years. Um, and then our remaining schedule is going to be Cincinnati, which will be on the 28th on Saturday. That's going to be a road one. It's going to be out there in Cincinnati. And then the home game against KC. Hopefully, KC's got everything locked up and has nothing to play for.
Yeah.
Um, and well, I don't know. Maybe that's the last time. Like 2 times, I know we played them at the end of the season. They actually beat us. One of them was Patrick Mahomes' first game, like ever, and then the other one was like Chase Daniels, I think. Um, but yeah, so we still got a great chance of making the playoffs. Just hang in there.
Mhm.
It's excruciating to wait one more week, especially a week and a half essentially, because we don't play until next week. Um, but yeah, how are you feeling about the playoffs still? Are you still pretty positive about it, or are you still are you a little shaken after that loss?
I'm so confident they'll end up in the playoffs. It's just either instead of having confidence that they could end up, not saying that they would with the fifth seed, it's now, do they end up as a sixth seed? Do they end up as a seventh seed? Which goes again, I mentioned earlier about how they could still clinch the playoffs this week with certain wins. So San Francisco, we need them to beat Miami. We need the Tennessee Titans to beat the Indianapolis Colts and the Cleveland Browns to win Cincinnati or to beat the Bengals. Unfortunately, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Miami are all the home teams this week.
Oh, okay.
Um, but there is another big game this week for playoff seeding between Pittsburgh and Baltimore, which could go a long way to deciding how that division turns out, which could, obviously puts the Broncos in play of, you know, still having one of those two games, having one of those revenge possibility games from the first round of the playoffs. So there's still a lot going for it. There's still a lot going for the Broncos, and it's just they could get some help this week with some losses. Um, and they could win. They could just need that one win.
Definitely.
Um, there is a weird situation, unfortunately, where the Indianapolis Colts can still make the playoffs over the Broncos, just simply
Yeah.
because they have, even though they beat them head to head, they need the Bengals and the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Colts to all and the Broncos all to end up in the same record. And because of head to head doesn't apply for everyone, it goes to conference, and the Colts would have the advantage over the conference. over the Broncos, and then it would go to head because it would narrow it down to the Chiefs and the Dolphins and the Colts, and the Colts beat the Dolphins, so that gives them the head to head.
Yeah, somebody was talking about that one, commented on me on that, and they said that they think they were going to finish 9-8 and end up in a 4-way tie, and
Yeah,
that's
it's
how we end
a
up losing a lot of these tiebreakers.
a 4-way tie is the worst thing for the Broncos to miss it.
You just got
But
to do it like the anchor man,
it
right?
requires them to lose out, and I don't think they lose out. So
You just got,
doesn't
if it's
matter.
a 4-way tie, it's got to end like Anchorman, like all the different news stations. Have you ever seen that? And they all
I've
fight
never
in the
seen
middle of the park.
Anchorman, honestly.
Huh?
I've never seen Anchorman.
No? Oh
Nope.
man, it's a good I got nothing to do, or in the background. You'll eventually like sit down and like you'll end up watching the whole movie. It's a silly movie, but
All right, guys, we're gonna be wrapping it up here shortly. So if you have any last minute super chats or stars, now's the time to get them in with any burning questions. Before that, I want to do one quick rant on Sean Payton, and then I'll pass it back off to you before I take us out of here.
okay.
Sean Payton has this bad tendency to blame everyone but himself. I have written multiple articles about how he needs to look in the mirror. I wrote one for this game. The fact that he had the gonads to go before the press after this game and talk about how the run game wasn't there in the second half, or however he worded it, he has no one to blame but himself for that. On the first two drives, both touchdown drives, they called 22 plays. 10 of them were designed runs, 12 of them were designed passes, with one of those 12 being a scramble by Bo Nix. All in all, it turned out to be 11 runs to 11 passes. The next 13 plays to close out the first half, 12 plays were passes, one run, one of those passing plays in a scramble. So even with that, it's 12 running plays to 11 passing plays. No, the run game is one that relies on confidence, especially from your offensive linemen. So when you go away from the run game, you start ruining that confidence. And also, it's more than that. I think it was Joe Thomas who talked about it. I think Tyler Columbus has talked about it. There's been multiple offensive linemen who've talked about it. When you call too many passing plays consecutively, your offensive line starts to play a little bit more passively. They start to play on their heels, as they call it, because they want to be quick in those pass sets. And it can be a little bit rough to adjust to that mentally, to start being more aggressive without seeing penalties get called on you. Just because it's a change of mindset. So when you go away from calling the run and then you go back to it, your offensive line is so set in pass protection mode that they can have some issues, which we did. And even then, it doesn't change the fact that you had multiple leads of 11-point leads and barely ran the ball. In the second half, they had 7 designed running plays, 8 total runs, with one of them being a scramble by Bo Nix. Yeah, there is no one to blame but Sean Payton for this play calling issue that they have in this had in this game. And it wouldn't be so frustrating if this was the first time, but this is like the 4th or 5th time where after the game he has gone out there and talked about an issue with the running game, blaming it on the offensive line. In the season opener, that's what he did, blamed it on the offensive line, even though they started the game, they were being efficient with the running. Not great, but they were efficient. They were averaging like 4.2 yards per carry over the first few drives. And then he stops calling running plays. And then he tries to call it on the running play. It gets stuffed. And it's the offensive line and the running backs. Another game, same kind of issue. It's a multiple game issue that he's had. And every single time it's somebody else's fault but him. You're the head coach. Look in the mirror, recognize your issues here, and fix it.
That reminds me of Ben Roethlisberger. He was another guy that liked to point the finger on other people. Like when he threw that ball straight to Shelby Harris, he's like, "Oh, Antonio Brown ran the route too flat," and he's like, "He threw it right to the guy." Man, I was going to say something too. I totally forgot. Was it here? No. Whatever. Okay. Yeah, I don't know. This Broncos team, I got hope. They're talented. They play with a lot of grit. They don't give up. They can shoot themselves in the foot. The Bengals will make you pay for something like that. Joe Burrow's having a hell of a season, and their record doesn't match how well he's played. But yeah, I'm excited to see Riley Moss come back.
Yep.
I want to see the PS2 Chase matchup. I know that they played before in the past, and PS2, I think it got the better of him. Then you got T. Higgins, and then you got Riley Moss. Who's their running back? I don't even know who their running back is. Oh yeah, that's what I was going to show. When you were talking about the running game too, as well. I looked up Audric Esme, 9 carries for 48 yards, 5.3 yards a carry.
Yeah, and it was a lot better before we got to some of those throwaway runs in the second half that he had, or the end of the first half.
It seems like everybody averaged over 5 yards except for Blake Watson and Mims. There was one play where Mims dropped in the backfield, and then they went right back to the same exact play, I think.
Yeah, that was a bad one from Mims. I mean, he had a good opening and he saw it, and that's just what he was playing on. So yeah, it's just was just an issue there. And I real quick, I want to grab this. Saints fan coming in. Broncos fans ungrateful like you guys. Haven't had a winning season since 2016. Sean Payton should just come back to the Saints so you guys can go back to losing records every year. Trade us a few first.
He knows the history of the Broncos.
But no, the Bronco fans going into the history of it is we've had over the last 10 years, we have matched almost the same number of losing seasons that we had prior to that in the whole thing of the franchise.
The thing is, the thing they always say is that we had more Super Bowl appearances than we had losing records.
Yeah.
Or losing seasons, whatever. So that's all we know is winning. That's why we do
have high standards, but all fans should. All fans do. Even Saints fans do. I mean, I remember seeing Saints fans with colleagues of mine throughout the years work with other who cover the Saints always complain about them. Just because you complain about them doesn't mean we're grateful. The Broncos are in a spot to win the playoffs because of Sean Payton as well, but it's also part of my job to sit there and highlight the issues with this team. That includes the coaching staff. That includes different players. It includes, Bo Nix when he has a bad game like he has the last few weeks. It includes all of that. Doesn't mean we're ungrateful. It just means that for me, I'm doing my job that I get paid to do. But no, I mean, I'm happy with Sean Payton. And if the Saints want to come in and say trade 3 first-round picks for him, I'll do that. Not because I don't like Sean Payton, but because I'll take those 3 first-round picks. But I know that would never happen, to be clear. But no, it's just it is what it is.
I wanted to end the show on a little positive note with our last category to talk about, and it was the Christmas gifts that the quarterbacks were getting for their offensive line. Did you see any of this stuff?
I saw the Joe Burrow giving the katanas. Custom made katanas for it. That's the only one I've seen though.
Yeah, they're saying that people are like, those aren't real. It's like, yeah, they're probably real. No, I remember the old Simeon one. This old Simeon one is probably the worst quarterback gift of all time. There was the jacket that dispensed Skittles.
The Skittle dispensing jacket. Yeah.
Hey, you better have $10,000 in that pocket. In one of the pockets. Like, come on, man. And then the ones today was Brock Purdy. I think he's going to be one of those broke athletes afterwards because he bought 5 Toyota Tundras and 5 Sequoias.
Oh yeah.
And he makes like $900,000 a year or something. I don't know. It was like $600,000 worth of stuff. And then Patrick Mahomes, he had a bunch of messages behind his. He got him some leather boots to strap up their boots. He got him a watch to tell him what time it is. He got him some recovery stuff, and then he got him a cooler to celebrate.
He's always had like meaning and messages behind his gifts for his offensive line and receivers. Except for, isn't he the one that got the offensive line the custom made golf carts too? Like last year.
I don't know. That would be cool. I'd love it.
But no, it's always funny to see what they do for them. I'd be curious to see what Bo Nix does, because the funny thing is you always want to make sure it's a nice one, because then that next game is you're going to get sacked 9 times if they don't like your gift.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing. Like, I can't remember who it was, but there was a former offensive lineman, not with the Broncos, who he appeared on a podcast and he made that comment. He's like, when we're getting to Christmas time, I would always tell the quarterback is make sure it's something nice, otherwise you're getting sacked a bunch. And it just always cracks me up, and it's always sat with me.
I think if I had a bunch of like kind of Quinn Miners type guys, I think I'd get him like one of those really nice shotguns, like those Beretta shotguns, I think they're called. They're a
Mm.
few $1,000s a piece. And then maybe like maybe one of those some gators so they can go drive around in their wilderness. Um, not actual alligator, but yeah, the little four-wheeler drive kind of situations. I think that'd be kind of cool. Um, at least for Quinn Miners. I don't know about the other guys. Would I get them?
Yeah. Let's see here. Garrett Bowles, a book on how not to hold. Mike McGlinchey, a book on how to, move at the snap and not early. Luke Wattenberg, how to play center because he's been pretty bad. And then Ben Powers, a book on pass protection. There we go. But Merry Christmas, Patrick.
That's
Good
pretty
to see
good.
you in here. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Christmas. But is there anything else before we get out of here?
Oh yeah. So I've noticed on our shows that we have about during the show we have a few hundred people watch on the show, which we greatly appreciate. You guys are awesome. We love like conversating with you guys. But I noticed over the week that they'll go from 500 to 1,000 to some 1,500, sometimes 2,000 people are watching it. So what that's kind of telling me is some of our amazing community wasn't able to watch the show live and they're watching it later. So I want to welcome you all to drop a question in the YouTube comments, and we'll pick a few out every episode, and we'll answer them at the end of the show, just so that you can be involved as well, and we can hear your voice and hear your comments and your opinions of the Broncos, of what we can do better or what we need to sustain and stuff like that. If the comments get heated in there, like a little back and forth, maybe we do a little segment on it, but yeah, we just want to make sure everybody's appreciated, because we really do truly appreciate, especially this time of year. We consider you all family, so thank you for joining us, and thank you for watching us afterwards as well.
And Phil, sorry for that. I totally forgot that I started this to bring up and got sidetracked. Thank you for mentioning that you sent stars. We appreciate that so much. He's saying, "Good evening, Eric and Kenneth. GB USA means God bless America." Can't believe I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Why do we not stick with man? If zone is not working, why doesn't VJ switch to man? Hashtag Buckham, hashtag MHH for life, hashtag Broncos for life, or BFL. I think that there's just this weird lack of trust in the other corners, because he's only done it when Patrick Surtain or Riley Moss has been out. So it's only been those 5 games. Other than that, it's been predominantly man coverage with heavy blitzing. It's like he doesn't trust Chris Abrams-Drain or Damari Mathis to hold up enough in man coverage to cover that. But you can still play man coverage. You can still be aggressive and still protect those corners without having to switch to man. And it's just, that's part of what makes it so frustrating that he doesn't do that. And especially with this game, I mean, you saw PJ Locke getting really struggling in zone, and he struggled in some of his worst games this season have been those in zone coverage. Your linebackers had their worst game on the season by far. And the Chargers figured out your zone coverage, and you just stick with it. It's one of those things of, again, just stick with what your players' strengths, stick to what they do best, and roll with it. And I do wonder too if part of the reason why they stuck with zone is also Patrick Surtain still being a little hobbled with that injury to his ankle.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I mean, Phil, your question is one that I've been asking for a while. When zone isn't working, why don't you just stick with man? Why don't you just stick with what you know your defense does well, instead of sticking with what they have struggled with all season long? But guys, that is going to do it for us. Before we get out of here, make sure you guys follow at MHH Pod on the Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at Mile High Huddle as well as at DVDD_pod for the Valley Drivers podcast. You can follow myself and Booker on Twitter at Kenneth_MHH and at Erick Trickel. Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Mile High Huddle with an underscore between mile and high and huddle. Make sure you guys go to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and leave a 5-star review for a chance to win some swag or gear, as I prefer to say, unlike our boss who prefers swag. weird word to me, but you guys can win some merchandise, some gear, and stuff like that of the different Mile High Huddle shows, or some other cool stuff that we have. Speaking of that, go to mhhmerch.com to get your merch on. You guys can get awesome hats like the one that I'm not currently wearing, but have right here. You also have Dev Valley Diver shirts. You have mugs. You have, I believe there's baby stuff, all sorts of things. And this time of year is a wonderful time to go get those orders in and give them to those special people in your life who happen to like the Dev Valley Divers and or just the Broncos in general. Go to facebook.com/Mile High Huddle Pod and Mile High Huddle to follow both the Facebook accounts for for Mile High Huddle. It's one of those ways that you can check it out. A lot of this stuff, it's free. Obviously, the merchandise is not. But clicking, liking, subscribing, sharing, those are some of the ways to do it. Which, speaking of, subscribe, like, and share. Do that on YouTube. Do that on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, whatever you happen to be tuning in on as well. And you guys, I really can't tell you how much it helps with the algorithms, especially right now, as a lot of sites seem to be changing up algorithms and stuff like that. And it is impacting us, unfortunately, until we get that figured out and corrected and figure out the way the algorithm is going and pointing us this time. So we appreciate that, guys, so much. And I won't be here next year, so I won't be back until the first show of 2025. Before I get out of here, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all the support week in, week out. Especially this time of year, you guys. I mean, I'm able to do this full time, and a lot of that is for your guys because of your guys' support. Which means that I have more time to spend with my daughter and my family, and I cannot tell you how much that is. And from all of you guys, I consider that to be my Christmas gift from you, and thank you guys so much. If you guys don't happen to celebrate Christmas, if you happen to celebrate one of the many holidays that happen during this time of year, I hope you have a wonderful day. Happy holidays to you all. Happy New Year's as well. Thank you guys so much, and hopefully we are talking about the Broncos in the playoffs next time I'm on. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Have a good one.
Merry Christmas, y'all.